Welcome to Speakernomics, the official podcast of the National Speakers Association. I'm Kenneth, Kinney, but friends call me Shark, and like you, I'm a professional speaker, and I love listening to Speakernomics. Speakernomics is a professional speaker show that will help you thrive and grow a speaking business so you too can change the world, one keynote session, workshop, and speech at a time. And on this episode, we welcome back Lois Creamer. She's a consultant who works with speakers, consultants, and experts who want to book more business, make more money, and fully monetize their intellectual property. Let's include being an author of a newly updated and very popular speaking book, Book More Business, Make More Money Speaking. Lois, welcome back to Speakernomics. How are you today?
Chuck, I'm great. It's good to be with you, friend.
Fantastic. Now, to all my speaking friends, you want to book more business, but there's so many changes that you need to make to get booked that maybe didn't work before. There's changes in licensing and intellectual property. And oh, what about AI? Today's speaking game is changing, and if you want to book more business and make more money speaking, then this is where we're going to start. And before we jump in, make sure to go to Speakernomics. That's where you can find the tips, insights, and knowledge to help you become a better speaker, build a better business, and get paid to speak. Lois, let's dive in. So talk a little bit about the changes. So the first book was 2017. Think about the changes. There have been so many in the last 7-8 years now. What were the biggest overall changes that you thought about in the speaking game, and where are we today?
Well, I think one of the biggest changes and what really made me committed to write a new edition, Shark, was virtual. Virtual, of course, is what saved our lives during COVID for professional speakers and consultants. And before that, we used it very sparingly. It was used more in training than in professional speaking. But all of us started using Zoom, and don't we wish we would have bought stock right before the shutdown, Shark, but we didn't. But Zoom has changed everything, Zoom or Teams or whatever you use. And so I wanted to address that in a newer edition, but also I wanted to include information on licensing of videos. Everybody is videotaping us now, and we need to make sure that we are managing that well and protecting our intellectual property and getting the value of our intellectual property from some kind of extended use. And then also artificial intelligence. Oh my goodness, it's changing every day. By the time next week rolls around, it might be a whole new playing field. But it's changed for content creators, for those of us who write blogs, books, anything. It's changed the way we write. It is going to be an essential tool for speakers and prospecting and doing market intelligence. And so these are three of the exciting things that I wanted to include in the new edition, and I did.
When you think about where we were in 2017, and one of the obviously biggest changes as well is we've had such an abundance of speakers enter into the marketplace. How do people stand out in this marketplace? Is very crowded, especially when you consider all the types of content that's being produced. It becomes a much murkier playfield, if you will, for speakers to stand out.
You know, I think uniqueness for professional speakers is all about your journey. What brought you to your expertise? Your uniqueness are the stories that you tell that make your content stickable. And I think nowadays, video is more important than it's ever been. It's always been important for professional speakers. It's never been more important than now. It allows buyers to know, like, and trust you, get to know you, sense a depth to your expertise. They can take a deep dive into what you're going to do when they hire you and put you on their platform. And I think that's what it's all about. To me, Shark, whenever a decision maker is hiring a speaker, it's all about risk aversion, isn't it? If they don't know us, if they haven't been in our audience, they are looking to make sure that they're not making a big mistake. And video can help speakers position themselves to make decision makers more confident in the marketplace. I think that is a big deal. I also think writing is important. Writing about your expertise, again, allows people to take that deep dive into what differentiates you from someone else. I think the biggest differentiator in the market, Shark, is your expertise and where you apply it. So taking your expertise, your stories, your experiences, and dropping them into a target market. That's what gets the fastest traction, I think.
And when you apply the concept of video and the need for speakers to produce more video showing that expertise, obviously that to some degree runs into intellectual property and licensing when you go on the stage and someone else records you. Talk, if you will, give us some guidance on what we need to do to consider how to best position our need to be out there and on video everywhere, but at the same time keep some of that gated, if you will, and own what is ours.
Yeah, I think this is kind of important. And this is, I have a whole chapter on licensing. And I'm not a lawyer, but I'll tell you my sense of licensing. I think it's great when we get video. We can use it to promote ourselves. We can use it for people to see us on display on the platform in front of an audience doing what we do. But when you go to a client event, you are finding now that you're getting recorded most of the time. It's why my clients now have a special rider in their agreement saying, if you plan on taping by any means, a separate agreement may apply. And my friend Russ Riddle, many of our friend Russ Riddle suggested that. It's to protect the rights, your rights of your own intellectual property. And so when I used to speak on sales, I would allow an organization to keep my video for 30 days. For people who weren't able to attend the event, wanted to look at it again, they had 30 days. Now, at the end of that free period, which I suggest everyone give a free period, it might be 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. That's a personal decision. But at the end of that 30 days, say, I want you to say this. I want you to feel free to use my video for the next 30 days. At the end of that 30 days, I'll reach out. And if you'd like further use of that video, I'd like to license further use of that video. What this says, I think, is a lot as far as how you're positioned. It says that you value your intellectual property in the marketplace. It allows a client to keep using it with your permission, which I think is really important. And it allows you to set up either 90 days, 6 months. I suggest to my clients, don't license it for over a year. Ask them to invite you back with new updates, new market material that will be key for them. But license that extended use. The challenge, Shark, becomes at the end of the 30 days or the licensing agreement date. Typically, that video is on the client's intranet. So how do we control that? It's hard. How do we control that? I always say you can hire a lawyer and take them to court. Or you can buy a black stocking cap, put pantyhose over your head, creep into the client's business, find their server, delete, then get out. That isn't as practical as one might hope it is. So I think at the end of the licensing agreement or at the end of the free period, you need to email, get it in writing. Since 30 days has expired and you no longer want to license use, I'm going to ask you to remove this from your intranet. This is kind of an ambiguous thing because I'm saying drop it after that. If a client would use it without our permission, I call it marketing. I believe we need to control what we can control. So I would look to get whatever I could in writing. I would certainly look to license further use. But at the end of the licensing period, I want you to just ask them to remove it and drop it.
So how should a speaker then think about that conversation with the meeting planner who might push back and say, well, you've got a lot of video out there talking about the same stories. I haven't heard a lot of stories of anybody pushing back. I'm trying to think. I haven't heard one conversation that I've been in with a meeting planner or organizer, but I know it'll come up at some point.
You know, I haven't heard a lot of pushback either, but I have to tell you what our friend Scott McCain says. Scott says that...
You got to do it in his voice, though, that deep voice.
I can't do it in his voice. Even if I have a cold, I can't do it in his voice. Scott said, I just feel like there aren't a lot of my clients who have employees beating a path to their door saying, you know, I would love to see that video of Scott's keynote from 2 years ago. Can you call that up? And he calls it marketing. And I think he's so right. I think that there are certain things we can control in our business, certain things we can't. And so let's keep our time and energy on the things we can control.
Yeah, I think where I sometimes think about it is with my own footage of diving with sharks that I sometimes share on stage. I thought about this because I talked to Sylvie DeGiusto last week. When you think about what she did at Influence with the
Yes.
holograms and that whole project, like that is some different kind of content than somebody that necessarily where you're worried about the words. It might be other things that people share. I think about Allison Massari's like beautiful artwork, things like that that maybe are somewhat in the slides. I think it's just having a good conversation with a meeting planner. But with AI, that's one of the things that you touch on in the book as well. And it's obviously probably one of the biggest revolutions of our lifetime. But what's the guidance you would use for how to best use AI to advance our speaking business and do the right things with it?
Well, I think AI needs to be viewed and used as a tool, not the end journey. Anything that you write, even if you use AI to assist you in writing, has to be in your own voice, or it's just so vanilla, as you said, it doesn't make any difference. I think that people used Google this way for years. They would Google something, copy and paste. I don't see that much of a difference, quite frankly. True, we might be able to target it a little bit more, but I think that if it isn't in your own voice, people are going to know. Plus, be aware that there's software out there now that people can use that will let them know where AI has been used and overused. You never want to put yourself in a position of having to defend what you've done. And so go into it with that mindset. It is a tool. It can be an idea generator, but it should just be used as a tool. And I think that it gets dangerous when you put a query into AI and you copy and paste and then put your name on it. That is a problem. That's a big problem. And I'll tell you, if somebody finds that, it's going to absolutely hurt you.
Yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of seal of approval, if you will, that's where speakers and authors and people can say this didn't touch AI at all. It's never going to get that way, but these unique stories that make us who we are.
That's right.
I wish people would lean into it a little bit more. So one of the interesting things too is you've been a speaker. You worked for brilliant speakers like Shep Hyken. You've been a meeting planner, you consultant. You've seen it from quite a few different points of view. What is it that you see when you thread through all of those that especially NSAers aren't doing enough with how they utilize NSA to help build their business?
Well, I think the most underutilized thing for NSA members is the vault. This is absolute gold. Before you ask anybody anything, go to the vault because there's probably some expert sharing expertise in the vault in your query. I think it's underutilized and it's a great resource. And NSA has really built up, so it now is a great search engine. It's easy to navigate. It was a little challenging at first when it was brand new, but it's much easier to negotiate now. I think that is underutilized. I also think if you live in a city with a chapter, you belong in a chapter of NSA. This is where we build community. National meetings are great, but the real community building, I think, starts at a more local level. If you live in a city where there is not a chapter, many of us, I'm in the St. Louis chapter, and we share our meetings virtually. You can be a member of the St. Louis chapter and be a virtual member and have access to all the benefits of membership. Granted, I think it's important to be there in person if you can, but if you can't, virtual is a wonderful addition. And I do think that you can still create community, even doing things virtually within chapters. So, but I think that these are some of the most underutilized things, Shark. And I'll also say the connections that we make at national meetings like Thrive and Influence, I think are key. If you're serious about growing your speaking business, you belong at the NSA national meetings. This is where you can get more education. You can hear breakouts on things that are current happenings in our business that you need to know. But also, Shark, you and I both know the connections that we make at these events are I think, part of the gold in attending the event. The conversations that you can have with key people, the connections you make that can last forever beyond that meeting, I think are really important. So I think when people are thinking about NSA, I think you need to think about it in a big way. What are the things that I can access, the tools that I can access that are going to absolutely help me in my business in every way?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to giving you a regular non-virtual hug when I see you at Thrive. So tell people, what are you going to be speaking about at Thrive in 25?
Well, I'm doing a breakout at Thrive, and I'm honored to be able to do that on how to grow your speaking practice, how to get more bookings. It's what I talk about. I'm going to talk about some of the new innovations using AI to sell. I'm going to be talking about licensing as well, and just some new sales things that I think people need to know, sales techniques that are working in the marketplace. So it's all about business growth with me. I always say, Shark, when anybody says, what are you going to talk about? I'm going to say the same thing I've been talking about for 20 years. But hopefully I'll have some new information that you might not have heard.
Now for a little speaking trivia. What is the top destination for meetings and events according to Cvent? Back with the answer in just a moment. Before we jump back to the show, here's a moment with NSA member, speaker, coach, and sales leader, Lon Graham. Lon, what does being part of NSA mean to you, and how is it helping you build your speaking business?
Yeah, well, thank you, Shark. NSA to me is really an opportunity to connect with a community of speaking professionals that are doing the things that I want to do and I want to be able to contribute to. So there's people, there's the saying from the show Yellowstone where Rip says, there's always a bigger bear. And sometimes there's a bigger bear that's just somebody that's doing something that you want to do, and you can learn from them and figure out how to do that. And sometimes I'm the bigger bear where I can help somebody who wants to do something that I'm doing. So for me, NSA is this community of bears, that an opportunity to connect to a community of people that are doing exactly what I want to do. Speaking can be an isolated business. It's not, I don't necessarily look at it as lonely, but it can be isolated. And so it's an opportunity to get involved with a community of people that are also living a life that can be isolated. And so for me, it really is an opportunity to connect to this great community. And the way, and in my mind, community creates sustainability. So it's an opportunity to sustain my business, an opportunity to contribute to the sustainability of other people's businesses.
And here's the answer. For 7 years in a row, Orlando has held the top spot for meetings and events. Other cities often near the top include Las Vegas, Nashville, Dallas, and San Diego. And now, back to the show. Well, now I want to ask you a question from a previous guest. The last guest made a point to distinguish between legacy and impact. So how do you define success or significance or impact in your speaking business and what you're doing now?
Well, I think uniqueness, I'm going to bring up that term again, can help create legacy and memorability in your speaking practice. I also think the difference that you make with clients, that is your legacy. Every day, you're creating a legacy in your speaking practice, every day. I do think that lots of times our writings, I remember when I was thinking about, when I was really, I'll say, Shark, when I was threatening to do a second edition on this book, which I finally did, my daughter said, you have to do that. This is part of your legacy. And that really kind of struck me, thinking about it in having more impact down the road. So I think that the things that we do, the differences that we make in the marketplace, the changes that we can make to help people to grow, to make more money, to create significance in business and in life, that's our legacy.
What is a question that you would like to ask a future guest on the show?
What do they think? How have they gone about building their legacy? I think that, I do think this is something that we don't think about until we've been at this for a while, because we're too busy doing, we're too busy creating. And I think after you've been in it a while, you start thinking, what are the things that are going to hopefully stand the test of time after we're gone?
Great point. Well, let's do a quick recap then based on Lois's booking more business advice. Number one, your uniqueness is not necessarily your topic. It's your journey and what brought you your expertise. It's your stories. And we talk about doing that. We show that through video. Video has never been more important than now. Producing video is a way to validate your expertise and make you a less of a risk to meeting planners. Number two, when you go to a client event, make sure to consider to protect your rights of your own intellectual property. You should value that intellectual property in the marketplace, and it allows you to position yourself a little bit differently where it truly has value. Number three, AI needs to be viewed and used as a tool. It has to be in your own voice to not be necessarily all AI. She brought up the great comparison of how people Googled everything. Don't be that person. Number four, I'll just add in another one. Use the vault. Build up the community of NSA, go to the meetings. It's another great reason to join the National Speakers Association. Lois, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Thrive in 25 and any other NSA event. Any last closing thoughts before we speak ourselves off this stage?
No, I just want to thank you for this terrific podcast that you do for NSA every month. I always can't wait for the next episode. And I would also say don't miss an episode of Speakernomics. They absolutely will help you grow your business. Thanks, Shark.
I would agree. Thank you. Friends, make sure to join us at Speakernomics.com and let your voice be heard. I'm Kenneth Kinney, your host of the National Speakers Association's podcast, Speakernomics. And this has been another fantastic episode of the show. Thank you, Lois, for being part of NSA and for lending your amazing advice to the show. And everyone listening, thank you for the privilege of your time. And remember, Speakernomics is a podcast where you'll learn to speak, get paid, repeat.